Top 10 strongest and deadliest dragons in the history of Westeros. Giant, deadly, tested with fire, the winged monstrosity called dragon. Some of the most stunning and potent dragons that did not appear on Game of Thrones' screen are promised in the new series of House of the Dragon. Dragons were extinct in Westeros by the time of Game of Thrones. The animals were abundant in the Valyrian freehold, but most of them disappeared with the doom of Valyria, before Daenerys brought the species back to life at the conclusion of Season 1 in Game of Thrones. Most of the surviving dragons perished during the interim period, rendering them extinct. However, there have been many dragons in Westeros' past who have had a significant influence on the continent's affairs for more than a century. Any dragon could affect the course of a fight, but some were noticeably more potent than their contemporaries. Dragons in Martin's reality often get larger as they get older. Who is the biggest, scariest monster in the forthcoming series? This video will make an effort to list the 10 deadliest and strongest dragons that the author of Game of Thrones ever created. Do you think that we might see some of these beasts in the show in the near future? Let us know in the comments below. Please note that the dates used for this video follow the Westerosi calendar, which uses Aegon's crowning in Old Town as the event to mark dates. There is no disputing that the most thrilling scenes from George R.R. Martin's world have involved dragons. However, they have been a part of House of the Dragon from the very beginning, and there is the expectation of some real dragon action to come in the future episodes of the new series. Hello and welcome to Marvelous Videos. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Number 10. Meleys. Meleys, who had never been mounted before, lived in King's Landing's Dragon Pit by 75 AC. Princess Alyssa Targaryen claimed her that year. Alyssa fastened her 9-day-old son Viserys to her bosom and flew on Meleys in the year 77 AC. Within a week following the birth of her second son, Daemon, she did the identical thing in 81 AC. The death of Princess Alyssa on her childbed in 84 AC left Meleys without a rider. Princess Rhaenys Targaryen claimed Meleys in 87 AC. Rhaenys traveled aboard Meleys to Highgarden in 89 AC to go with King Jaehaerys Targaryen as he made his way into the Shield Islands. Rhaenys insisted on flying to the wedding on Meleys when she wed Lord Corlys Velaryon in 90 AC. Her actual age and family history are still unknown. Meleys was possibly one of the second-generation dragons birthed to the original three, Balerion, Meraxes, and Vhagar, from the Conquest generation, and appears to have been one of the oldest and biggest after Vhagar herself. When the dance took place, Vhagar was 181 years old, and at that time, she is reported to have become as big as Balerion had during the War of Conquest. Meleys was known as the Red Queen because of the red scales and pink tissues on her wings. Her horns, claws, and crest were all a brilliant hue of copper. Meleys, who easily outran Caraxes and Vhagar, was regarded as one of Westeros' fastest dragons in 75 AC. Meleys had become complacent by 129 AC, yet she was still terrifying when roused. Meleys was aged, experienced in combat, and clever. During the Dance of the Dragons, Rhaenys rode Meleys. Rhaenys flew her to the fortress to provide assistance, while Rook's Rest was under siege by Sir Criston Cole's troops in 129 AC. Iron bolts from Cole's soldiers struck Meleys, infuriating her but doing no harm. She spewed fire on the soldiers below in retaliation. Meleys engaged Sunfire and Vhagar in aerial combat when they showed up above Rook's Rest. Meleys could have had a chance against the older Vhagar alone, but not against Vhagar and Sunfire united. According to Archmaester Gildane, before Vhagar pounced on them, Meleys was able to clamp her mouth around Sunfire's neck. The three dragons then plummeted to the ground, a half-league away from Rook's Rest. Meleys' body was torn to bits, and she was unable to survive the fall. The troops of King Aegon Targaryen II took Meleys' head back to King's Landing and drove it around the city on a cart, frightening the locals into silence. Number 9. Quicksilver. Rhaenys Targaryen and Prince Aegon Targaryen owned a dragon named Quicksilver. It was one of the second generation of dragons that hatched soon after the Targaryen conquest in the world of Ice and Fire and Blood. In the year 10 AC, Quicksilver and Aenys Targaryen formed their first link. Aenys, who had been ill since birth, severely worsened after his mother perished in the First Dornish War, although he recovered rapidly after forging a relationship with the dragon. The myth that such a frail prince may have been a bastard birthed by a person other than King Aegon was put to rest as a result. In order to attend the feast intended to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the peace between Dorne and the Iron Throne, Aenys flew aboard Quicksilver to Sunspear in Dorne in 23 AC. In the year 37 AC, Aenys succeeded his father, King Aegon Targaryen. He was in Highgarden with Quicksilver when his father passed away, and they both flew to Dragonstone to attend his father's cremation. When Aenys passed away in 42 AC, his half-brother Maegor ascended to the throne. Both Quicksilver and Dreamfire stayed in King's Landing when Maegor Targaryen assumed the throne. Quicksilver was 1/4 the size of Balerion in 43 AC. Her fireballs were a light shade of white. Despite the fact that the texts do not specify the color of his body, Quicksilver's name implies that his scales were silver. Rhaena and Aegon noted Maegor's absence from the city while he was in Oldtown in 43 AC. With the assistance of numerous local accomplices, they were able to successfully infiltrate King's Landing. But they were aware that they dared not attempt to grab the crown because they lacked the necessary power to do so. They had come in search of dragons. Rhaena found Dreamfire, and Aegon at least claimed Quicksilver, the treasured mount of his late father. Aegon made an effort to reclaim the throne that was rightfully his, but in the battle beneath the God's Eye in 43 AC, both Quicksilver and Aegon perished while battling Maegor on his dragon Balerion. Quicksilver's throat was in his grasp as Balerion tore one of her wings from her body. After a fierce aerial battle, Quicksilver succumbed to her death, along with her rider Aegon. Number 8. Sea Smoke. The presence of Laenor's dragon is not revealed until the last seconds of episode 3 of House of the Dragon, which is playing a little sneaky with its audience. However, Laenor has really been training his dragon, Sea Smoke, the entire while. In the A Song of Ice and Fire timeline, Laenor was born in 94 AC, and it was in 101 AC, when Sea Smoke was around 7 years old, that he finally claimed the young dragon. A portion of Sea Smoke's name stems from his appearance, which is a pale silver-gray beast. The sea part of the name probably derives from the maritime past of House Velaryon and the seahorse symbol. Despite being slightly smaller than his fellow dragon kin, Sea Smoke is nevertheless quick and effective in battle, not to mention that Laenor himself is a member of House Targaryen. Half of his blood comes from the Targaryens because his mother was the granddaughter of the old King Jaehaerys. Laenor's access to the adolescent dragons on Dragonstone was made possible by his Targaryen ancestry, and it is likely from there that he met Sea Smoke. During the battle for the Stepstones, Laenor mounts Sea Smoke. He plays a key role in breaking the Triarchy's siege of Bloodstone by saving the injured Prince Daemon Targaryen from the Triarchy soldiers. Sea Smoke was also written by Adam of the Hull. Many in the Black Council questioned Sir Adam's fidelity, thinking of the two betrayers. The Dragon Seed was only defended by the Queen's Hand, Lord Corlys Velaryon, who asserted that Sir Adam and his brother Alan were real heirs and deserving of Driftmark. Despite the Hand's passionate protestations, Queen Rhaenyra ordered Sir Luthor Largent to take Adam into custody in the Dragon Pit, because she suspected him to be a turncloak. Sir Adam, who had been warned, was able to make his getaway flying aboard Sea Smoke before being confronted. Sir Adam was keen to show that not all bastards must be turncloaks when the Second Battle of Tumbleton got underway. When the angry, riderless Vermithor rose into the air and began ruthlessly murdering those on the ground, the battle was over. Sea Smoke descended upon him as the Bronze Fury wreaked havoc, sending him screaming into the muck. Even though he must have known in his heart that Sea Smoke could not equal the more experienced dragon, according to Archmaester Gildane, Adam must have been compelled by duty to protect his troops on the ground. As soon as the Blue Queen Tessarion entered the battle without a rider, all three dragons engaged in a bloody battle to the death. Vermithor murdered Sea Smoke by biting through his neck and ripping off his head, and later died in the aftermath of the battle. At the reconstructed Tumbleton, Sea Smoke and Vermithor's remnants became a popular tourist attraction. Number 7. Vermithor. King Jaehaerys Targaryen once rode the male dragon Vermithor, also known as the Bronze Fury. Vermithor is a bronze-colored dragon who is about a century old, intimidating, and battle-proven. He was regarded as his trusted mount by Jaehaerys the Conciliator, the most beloved king of Westeros. At the start of the series, Vermithor is without a rider and doesn't enter the conflict until much later. Although Vermithor is beyond his youth and may not be the toughest opponent in a fight, his experience, age, and gigantic bulk still make him lethal. Only Balerion and Vhagar were greater dragons than Vermithor in 48 AC. Vermithor was about a century old at the time of the Dance of Dragons. He was a terrifying creature. By the time of Aegon II's reign, Vermithor was accustomed to men and had a former rider. He was also more accommodating of new riders. By 48 AC, when Prince Jaehaerys Targaryen staked his claim to the Iron Throne, Vermithor had acknowledged Jaehaerys as his rider. Jaehaerys arrived in King's Landing on Vermithor 9 days after the enigmatic passing of King Maegor Targaryen to take the throne. Jaehaerys once traveled to Winterfell with 6 dragons during his rule, along with Queen Alysanne Targaryen, his sister wife. Jaehaerys pursued Alysanne on Vermithor when she became bored and flew her own dragon, Silverwing, to the Wall in the north. When Jaehaerys passed away in 103 AC, Vermithor was left without a rider. He had no new rider during the duration of Jaehaerys' heir, King Viserys Targaryen. Vermithor dwelt on the island of Dragonstone at this period and established his lair in one of the smoky tunnels of the Dragonmont. Vermithor was only 20 feet above the ground when sea smoke crashed down on him. The two dragons were so entwined together as they rolled over the field that they were unable to separate. Sea smoke was no match for Vermithor, according to Lord Benjicod Blackwood, because of the larger dragon's size and weight. In Lord Blackwood's opinion, Vermithor would have destroyed Sea Smoke if Tessarion had not intervened. The 3 dragons engaged in a death duel. Sea Smoke was slain by Vermithor when he bit into his neck and severed his head. He tried to fly while holding his catch in his jaws, but his wings were damaged and he was unable to support the weight. After a fierce battle, he succumbed to his wounds and passed. His remains are kept in the new city of Tumbleton. Number 6. Sunfire. Sunfire possessed delicate pink wing membranes and sparkling gold scales that sparkled like hammered gold in the sunshine. His flames were also golden. Sunfire was the most exquisite dragon ever seen in the opinion of Archmaester Gyldayn. Despite his youth, the magnificent Sunfire was a powerful warrior due to his size and weight. King Aegon II rode Sunfire the Golden, a male dragon. To honor him, Aegon turned the 3-headed Targaryen dragon on his coat of arms golden. The egg of Sunfire hatched on Dragonstone. Although his precise year of birth is unknown, in 120 AC, he was characterized as a young dragon. Sunfire was believed to have been claimed by Prince Aegon Targaryen by 120 AC, though it is unclear precisely when he accepted the prince as his rider. In one of the first significant engagements of the war, the Battle of Rook's Rest in 129 AC, Sir Criston Cole, Aegon's hand, tricked Princess Rhaenys Targaryen and her dragon, Meleys, into falling into a trap. Aegon the Conqueror and his younger brother Aemon Targaryen came on their respective dragons, Sunfire and Vhagar, and the 3 creatures engaged in combat 1,000 feet above the battlefield as Meleys was destroying Criston's army of Greens besieging the castle. The 3 dragons collapsed to the ground when Vhagar descended upon them from above and caught them as Meleys tightened her teeth around Sunfire's neck. Vhagar was unharmed, but Meleys was killed and Sunfire had one of his wings torn from his body. King Aegon was sent to King's Landing for treatment after suffering severe burns and injuries during the fight. Sunfire stayed close to Rook's Rest to give him time to recover, because he was unable to fly and was too big and heavy to be relocated. In order to protect the dragon, Criston posted troops nearby. When the charred corpses of the fallen warriors ran out, Criston's men brought Sunfire calves and lambs for him to consume. Wallace Mooton, Lord of Maidenpool, marched his bravest soldiers to Sunfire in an attempt to destroy the dragon after retaking Rook's Rest from Aegon's army. Sunfire was outraged by the assaults and retaliated with his tail and inferno, murdering 300 of his assailants, including Wallace. After the incident, Sunfire vanished a week later. Sunfire had healed enough from his conflict with Meleys to be able to fly once more, despite the fact that his wing had regenerated at an unusual angle. Sunfire was more hurt than before after the battle with Moondancer. He had big cuts around his neck, scabs on his belly, and new scars all over his back. He also had lost his right eye. Sunfire, who was unable to fly anymore, continued to feast on Moondancer's body, and later on butchered sheep in the rear courtyard where he had fallen. When Rhaenyra saw the injured Sunfire, she chuckled. Aegon decided to feed his half-sister to his dragon, and it's reported that Sunfire only reacted to Rhaenyra when Alfred stabbed her in the breast with a knife, awakening it with the scent of her blood. Sunfire engulfed her in a flaming shower before trapping her arm and shoulder in his fangs. Sunfire barely left Rhaenyra's left leg below the shin after devouring her in 6 bites. Sunfire withered and finally stopped eating, contrary to King Aegon's original hopes that he may recuperate enough to fly once again. On the 9th day after the 12th moon of 130, he passed away due to his foul wounds. Number 5. Caraxes. Caraxes was large, slender, and red. He was fierce, terrifying, and skilled in warfare. Caraxes was around half the size of the enormous Vhagar during the Dance of the Dragons. Prince Aemon Targaryen and subsequently Prince Daemon Targaryen rode the dragon Caraxes. In 72 AC, Caraxes was initially claimed by Aemon Targaryen, Prince of Dragonstone, and heir presumptive to the Iron Throne. The Dragon Keepers gave him the moniker Bloodworm because they thought he was the most vicious of all the juvenile dragons in the Dragon Pit. During the Fourth Dornish War, in 83 AC, Aemon employed Caraxes to engage the Dornish fleet. Aemon went to the island of Tarth on Caraxes' back to assist Lords Cameron Tarth and Bormund Baratheon in repelling the invaders in 92 AC. When renegade mermen attacked portions of the island, Caraxes swiftly outran the Valyrian fleet commanded by Lord Corlys Velaryon. Prince Daemon Targaryen, Aemon's nephew, had chosen Caraxes as his mount by the year 105 AC. When Daemon fled from King's Landing for Dragonstone, he brought Mysaria along with him aboard Caraxes. Caraxes was employed by Daemon in the War for the Stepstones in 106 to 115 AC. Daemon split his attention between the Stepstones and Dragonstone at that period, where he frequently flew with his niece, Princess Rhaenyra, and her dragon Syrax. Later in the Civil War, in Harrenhal, Daemon confronted Aemon Targaryen and Vhagar from atop Caraxes. The subsequent battle above the God's Eye claimed the lives of all 4. Vhagar and Caraxes locked at the conclusion of the conflict, and they both plummeted into the God's Eye. Caraxes lashed his teeth around the larger dragon's neck and tore it out while in the nosedive, even as Vhagar's claws ripped up his abdomen, and she used her fangs to tear off one of his wing arms. The impact of the fall killed Vhagar. Caraxes' entrails were coming out, and one of his forearms had been severed completely. Yet he somehow survived long enough to drag himself out of the sea and onto the land. The dragon laid to rest in front of the gates of Harrenhal. Number 4. Drogon. Along with his brethren Rhaegal and Viserion, Drogon is one of the 3 dragons that were born in the wastelands beyond Lazar. He bears the name of Khal Drogo, the late husband of Daenerys. His red-black wings and black scales can be used to identify him. Additionally, he served as Daenerys' own mount. Drogon is presently the last of the 3 brothers to still be alive after Viserion and Rhaegal passed away, making him the sole known living dragon in the Game of Thrones universe. Rhaegal and Viserion are substantially smaller than Drogon. Drogon was initially biologically the luck of the draw, but while they spent more than a year shackled under the free city of Meereen, Drogon was left free to hunt and soar whenever he pleased, becoming way larger than them. Drogon can spit corrosive jets of fire and possesses incredible physical power. He can fly faster and at greater heights than any other animal. Drogon's fire was demonstrated to be powerful enough at the Battle of King's Landing to destroy the city structures, including the Red Keep, and break through the city gates. Later, in a surprise attack on the Lannister army, Daenerys leads Drogon to the Reach along with a sizable Dothraki horde. The Dothraki cavalry and Drogon attack together, and the Lannisters are utterly unprepared and easily defeated. After the fight, Drogon lies down on a tiny hill and watches as the Lannister and Tarly troops who survived are brought before his mother. The surviving men are given an option by Daenerys: kneel or perish. When the majority of them continue to object, Drogon, who appears irritated by this, roars, startling many more into bending the knee. Drogon burns Randall Tarly and his son Dickon to death after they decide against joining Daenerys. This causes the other troops to instantaneously fall to their knees in fright. He exhibits empathy despite having an untamed mentality as he lays next to Daenerys while she laments the loss of Jorah Mormont at the Battle of Winterfell. The fact that Drogon roars in agony when Viserion is slaughtered by the Night King and ferociously destroys the Iron Fleet and all of the scorpions used by the enemy at the Battle of King's Landing shows how much he cares about Rhaegal and Viserion as well. In the Battle of Winterfell, Drogon plays a key role. He burns a great number of whites alongside Jon Snow and Rhaegal before fighting the Night King. Drogon was taught by his mother to comprehend High Valyrian instructions, including Dracarys, High Valyrian for Dragonfire, which Daenerys uses to order him to breathe fire on her opponents. In Game of Thrones, Daenerys used the Dracarys directive to burn her adversaries alive, most notably the slave owner Krasnys Monaklos in Season 3, Episode 4, when he disregarded both her need for revenge and her command of High Valyrian. Pyat Pri, the Karth warlock, who was holding her infant dragons prisoner in the House of the Undying, was of course Dany's first Dracarys victim. In a period of relative calm, the Targaryens are shown performing their family rites in the House of the Dragon, Dracarys scenario. We may reasonably infer from it what Drogon did with Dany's body after he melted the Iron Throne and left King's Landing. Samwell Tarly's post-show theory is that the dragon transported the Khaleesi to Volantis, where she had lived in exile following the death of her father, and incinerated her remains in accordance with family custom. Number 3. Vhagar. During the War of Conquest, Aegon the Conqueror and his sisters used a number of dragons, one of which was Vhagar. It was given the name of an old god from ancient Valyria. Visenya Targaryen, Laena Velaryon, and Aemond Targaryen rode Vhagar. Vhagar was one of the biggest dragons in existence at the time of the Dance of the Dragons. Only Vermithor, the Bronze Fury, came near to matching her size. According to reports, she was as large as Balerion himself. Even for a dragon, Vhagar was a vicious, combative, and hostile being her whole life. One of the most terrifying of her kind, it is said that in her prime, her roar shook Storm's End's very foundations. The discussion turns to dragons in a distressing moment in Episode 2, when Corlys Velaryon's 12-year-old daughter, Lady Laena, seeks to court the elderly king. Viserys acknowledges that he is unsure of the location of Vhagar, the oldest dragon still alive, and one that has grown too large to fit in the dragon pit, when Lady Laena inquires about his whereabouts. When compared to the House of the Dragon source material, where Vhagar's whereabouts are never in question, this is a subtle but significant difference. This might be teasing a major revelation that will occur later in the Game of Thrones spin-off. Meraxes, Balerion, and their riders, together with Vhagar's other beast companions, flew to Westeros. She was used in the War of Conquest, flying into combat in the Gulltown Seas with her rider Visenya, where they wiped off the Arryn fleet. For the first time in history, all three of the original Targaryen dragons descended from the sky simultaneously during the conflict that came to be known as the Field of Fire. Vhagar, Meraxes, and Balerion the Black Dread together burned 4,000 soldiers to death. Queen Visenya flew Vhagar up to the day of her passing. The dragon participated in the First Dornish War, destroying all Dornish strongholds except for Sunspear. Vhagar ignited the Conqueror's pyre on fire when King Aegon passed away. Visenya fled in a rage on her dragon after his successor, Aenys, crowned his son, Prince Aegon, the Prince of Dragonstone. Apparently, the moon became a blood-red color as Vhagar swooped away. Once Aenys had passed away, Visenya and Vhagar take her son Maegor to Pentos so that he may be crowned king. Once Visenya passed away, Vhagar was left without a rider. This situation would persist until late in King Jaehaerys Targaryen's reign, when Laena Velaryon, Prince Daemon Targaryen's first wife, would tame Vhagar. She regularly took to the skies on the Great Dragon, frequently with Daemon and her niece Rhaenyra. Prince Aemond Targaryen, the younger son of King Viserys I Targaryen, risked to approach Vhagar while without a dragon. During the Dance of the Dragons, Aemond unleashed havoc with Vhagar. Prince Lucerys Velaryon and his dragon Arax were slain by the enormous beast. Then, at the Battle of Rook's Rest, Vhagar and Aemon collaborated with Aegon II and his dragon Sunfire the Golden to murder Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, the queen who never was, and her dragon Meleys, the Red Queen. Meleys could have slain Vhagar by herself, but she was murdered alongside her rider since she was unable to slay both dragons. Vhagar was the oldest and most powerful dragon at King Aegon Targaryen's disposal when she passed away. She was also the final survivor of Aegon the Conqueror's conquest of Westeros. Number 2. Meraxes. A deity of the Valyrian freehold inspired the naming of Meraxes. During the Century of Blood, her egg hatched on Dragonstone. Rhaenys Targaryen eventually claimed Meraxes. Before she was betrothed to her brother Aegon, Rhaenys rode Meraxes to first show off her dragon riding skills. Rhaenys enjoyed flying and spent more time riding dragons than both her siblings put together. Aegon sent his sisters to the nearby castles to force their submission once he arrived in Westeros and started his invasion. Roseby gave up without a struggle to Rhaenys and Meraxes. Following that, Rhaenys and Meraxes went with Orys Baratheon on his quest to defeat Argilac Durrandon, the final Storm King. The wind and rain at the Battle of the Last Storm caused them to remain on the ground, but Meraxes killed many while they were there by enveloping Argilac's vanguard and the heroes of his personal guard in Dragonflame. Rhaenys then sent Meraxes to Storm's End Castle so they could negotiate with Argella, the daughter of Argilac. Rhaenys flew Meraxes to Stony Sept after the Stormlanders had submitted, so they could join forces with Aegon's army, her siblings, and their dragons. They moved south, where all 3 Targaryen dragons participated in the pivotal Field of Fire battle, the only one during Aegon's conquest in which all 3 dragons took to the sky simultaneously. 4,000 soldiers were slain and burned alive by Meraxes, Vhagar, and Balerion together. Meraxes was then flown to Dorne by Rhaenys, who then demanded their capitulation. When Aegon finally made up his mind to take over the realm in 4 AC, the First Dornish War was underway. As she neared Sunspear and set fire to the planky town on Meraxes, Queen Rhaenys led the initial attack on Dorne. The dragon and Rhaenys plummeted from the skies in 10 AC during the First Dornish War at Hellholt after an iron bolt from a scorpion passed through Meraxes' eye. The tallest tower of the castle, as well as a portion of the curtain wall, were demolished by Meraxes while she was dying. Whether Rhaenys outlived Meraxes is uncertain. Rhaenys is said to have lost her seat and fallen to her death, while some assert that she was crushed to death in the castle yard under Meraxes. A peace mission later gave Meraxes' skull back to Aegon. The bones at Hellholt were still there decades later in the open countryside. Meraxes' skull was one of 20 Targaryen dragon skulls that hung on the wall of the throne room of the Red Keep. King Robert Baratheon had the skulls hauled from the royal room after Robert's rebellion and kept them in a gloomy crypt. When Tyrion Lannister traveled to the city in 284 AC to attend his sister Cersei's wedding to Robert, he noticed the skulls in the dungeon, including Meraxes'. Number 1. The Black Dread, Balerion. The only dragon to live through the War of Conquest was Balerion, one of the 5 that Lord Aenor Targaryen the Exile had brought from Valyria to Dragonstone. The largest and most potent of the 3 dragons House Targaryen carried with them to Dragonstone, a volcanic island far east of Westeros, where they took up residence after escaping the Doom of Valyria. When Aegon the Conqueror began his conquest of the 7 kingdoms, he rode Balerion, while his sisters Visenya and Rhaenys mounted the dragons of Vhagar and Meraxes, respectively. Balerion had black scales and wings. During the War of Conquest, when Aegon invaded Westeros, Balerion became known as the Black Dread. Many people were killed during the conquest by Balerion and his siblings Meraxes and Vhagar, but they gained notoriety during the Field of Fire battle against the kings, Lorne of the Rock and Mern of the Reach. Aegon and his sisters sent forth Balerion and the other dragons, who decimated the 2 kings' armies. The 3 Targaryen dragons roasted over 4,000 warriors from King Mern and Lorne's army alive within their armor before they were charred to death. By breathing flames over the swords that Aegon had taken from his adversaries, Balerion assisted Aegon in forging the Iron Throne. The process took several weeks and resulted in a very ugly throne. Maegor rode Balerion after his death because he believed that any other dragon was unworthy of him. Maegor rode him throughout the entirety of the Faith Militant Uprising, burning anybody who disagreed with House Targaryen's ongoing reign. Later, during the battle beneath God's Eye, Balerion easily dispatched his relative Quicksilver along with her rider Aegon. Even when compared to Vhagar, Caraxes, and Vermithor, Balerion's enormous skull was the greatest of all the dragons. Balerion had grown to such a size that he could eat a mammoth whole. As dark as his scales was his fire. His wings could envelop entire villages with the shadow they cast. Given that Balerion has never lost a combat against either humans or another dragon, his sheer presence on a battlefield implied complete annihilation of the foe. Balerion passed away in 94 BC. The future king Prince Viserys was Balerion's final rider, but Balerion was already extremely old and close to death when he ascended the Black Dragon. As seen in House of the Dragon, the skull of the Black Dread was initially displayed in the Red Keep. In Game of Thrones, Arya Stark discovers Balerion's enormous skull in the castle's dungeons after King Robert Baratheon transported the dragon's bones there. The biggest and most savage Targaryen dragon allegedly passed away one day while sleeping. Balerion had the deadliest flame of any living dragon or any dragon who replaced him. This is made abundantly obvious by the way Balerion alone demolished Harrenhal, one of the strongest fortresses ever built, leaving it a burnt wreck, without any assistance from Meraxes or Vhagar. In the world of Game of Thrones, Daenerys Targaryen's Drogon is the creature that comes closest to resembling the Black Dread. Unmatched by any dragon that had ever lived, Balerion was a true Targaryen legend. What can viewers expect from Dance of the Dragons? The first 2 episodes introduced viewers to some of the Targaryen's dragons and provided important details on one lost dragon. An extremely precious dragon egg is also the subject of some fighting in the series. Many of the upcoming dragons will be significant players in the Civil War. Others will be well known as historical figures with connections to Targaryens from earlier generations. Ryan Condal and Miguel Sapochnik, the series' creators, have disclosed that there would be 17 dragons in the show. With an increased CGI dragon budget, HBO's upcoming spin-off, House of the Dragon, claims to contain all of the original series' rich backstory and also present its viewers with some exciting aerial combat. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.
Take cover!